over here. Okay. I'm live on Facebook and also on YouTube and then over here on TikTok also. So look, I went live earlier. I have this banner behind me so you could see what the topic is. I couldn't figure out how to put like the topic like in letters or whatever. So there's a photo of Diddy there. So I guess everybody can tell that this is an update about today's hearing. Okay. I'm a little late. I wanted to go live a little bit earlier, but I got busy and I just didn't have the time. I have this fan because I'm hot in here and I can't have the fan or the AC on because it's going to make too much noise and y'all won't be able to hear me. Okay. So look, this isn't going to be a long video. Okay. This isn't going to be a long video. It's not going to be a long video because it's just not. There really wasn't that much to talk about. Good to see you too, Bridget. Not much to talk about because it really wasn't. It wasn't a long hearing. It just wasn't a long hearing. So this hearing, you turn this off. This hearing was basically to discuss for the lawyers, you know, to try for Diddy's lawyers to try to get this thrown out, get everything thrown out. The sentencing is next Friday. Okay. So they want this conviction thrown out. They want it thrown out. Okay. I don't know if anybody's here on Facebook yet. I'm on StreamYard over here. So I don't know if anybody's over here. I can't tell. But if you guys are watching me on Facebook or on YouTube, please drop a comment and let me know if you can hear me over there. Right. So I'm just going to get started. So yeah, listen, I got into the main courtroom today. I was able to get into the main courtroom. I thought this thing was going to start at 9:00. Okay. I thought it was going to start at 9:00. I was late. I left my house at like 9:00. I was running so late. And then what ended up happening is when I got down there at like 9:45. Okay. Don't you know, I saw this guy, he's like a journalist from Canada, something like that. And I was like, look, you know, what time is the thing? And he was like, oh no, it's at 11:00. I said, 11:00? What are you talking about? Oh, hey, thank you, Angela. Okay, so you can hear me. So I was like, what are you talking about 11:00? He was like, yes. He was like, I got here at 7. He was like, I'm so freaking mad. I got here at 7. He was like, I could have slept late, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, great. So I went live on TikTok very briefly and just sort of let everybody know that I was going to be coming back later, blah, blah, blah. And then I said at about 10:30, I said, you know something, let me get my butt behind in there. Okay. So I went inside and I was able to get into the main courtroom. Yo, if anybody here saw from before the hell I went through to get into the main courtroom the last time I got in, I had to stay overnight. I got to the courthouse like 10 something at night or 11, whatever time it was the night before. Got there and I literally camped out in front with a blanket, stayed overnight so I could get into the main courtroom. Today, got there, walked right into the main courtroom. Now, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of people that ended up coming, but I just don't think that they just knew what was really happening. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just going to go over some of my notes. We'll go briefly over what happened, what transpired, right? You remember, Bridget, what transpired. And then that's it. Okay. I'm not going to be here long. Okay. So I was super happy it wasn't as crowded. The members of the press were there. It definitely was not as crazy as it was before. Next Friday, 100% is going to be a madhouse. I know that for a fact. Okay. I'm going to get into how I'm going to try to see about getting into courthouse next Friday. I'm going to tell y'all at the end of this. Okay. So, all right. Anyway. So, now when I got there were some content creators that were there in the first couple of rows there in the rows that are set aside for just like regular onlookers or whatever. Then there were like a bunch of interns there. So we're on the left side of the courtroom. So you have the left side and the right side of the courtroom. The right side of the courtroom is designated just for press only. Okay. So obviously multiple press people were there, ABC, all the people were there and stuff like that. Right. Several YouTubers. There were a couple of family members there that I didn't recognize, but I knew they were friends or family because they were in specific designated, roles or whatever. Okay. I did see some of his lawyers come in, Nicole Westmoreland, the tall one. I forgot what his name is. I briefly, interviewed him one time when I was down there. I forgot what his name is, though. He was there. Brian Steele and the appellate lawyer was there too. And the room was starting to fill up. The prosecution team walked in without Maureen Comey. So if you guys know, Maureen Comey was fired. Okay. She got fired. That's a whole nother story. Didn't have anything to do with Diddy or anything like that. Okay. But she got fired. Remember, Trump is there, right? So he has beef with her father. Okay. James Comey. So that's what that's about. So some people thought it was because of the fact that they didn't get the major conviction on the RICO and all of that stuff. That's why she got fired. That's not why she got fired. Okay. So, okay. So then, some of the prosecution team walks in. Teeny Garagos, she's very pregnant, honey. She walked in. She is pregnant. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely because of her dad. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So also, if you're not following me here on TikTok, follow me, please. Okay. All right. So after a while, we're all sitting there, starting to fill up and stuff like that. And then one of the marshals goes to open the door on the left side, and I hear shackles. So let me tell you a little bit of tea that I found out. Okay. Tini Garagos, or Tenny, however you pronounce her name, she wrote a letter basically asking for Diddy to be able to wear his clothing, right? Like regular street clothes, his sweater and because throughout the trial he was wearing a sweater and like a dress shirt underneath or whatever, and he would have on just regular clothing or whatever, right? So she wrote a letter, and then the letter never got signed by Judge Agnew. The letter never got signed by Judge Subramanian. Like, he just never signed it. There was an error in the letter, because the letter basically said, yes, I would like, for Sean Combs to be permitted to receive non-person clothing at the MDC to wear for his appearance on September 25th. 2025, and also his sentencing on October 3rd. She put 3035. Child, that's 100 years from now. 2025, okay? And then she said he's permitted to have 2 button-down shirts, 2 pairs of pants, and 2 sweaters, and 1 pair of shoes without laces that he's supposed to be able to wear. Child, the judge never signed it. And I thought that he didn't sign it because of maybe the error or something like that, or found out that let me tell you what he said. He said, why would he need civilian clothing in court when there's no jury present? And she actually wrote the letter yesterday. She wrote the letter yesterday for today, which to me, I feel like she should have written it before, try to negotiate something before, but she did it at the 11th hour. So when you could hear the shackles or whatever, I guess one of the marshals went in, took the shackles off, and eventually Diddy came out. And there was sort of a bit of a gasp, like an audible gasp in the courtroom, because he definitely was not looking that great. Now, if you guys seen before when I did these lives and stuff like that, and I talked about how he really did not look that bad before, he did not look that great today. He does look more slender. The tan prison jumpsuit he was wearing definitely did not do him any favors. It did not look good. And his hair is gray. That's inconsequential to me. He's 56 years old. I think the gray hair looks fine on him. He just looks more slender, and definitely, again, with the ashen look, looks like he needs some sun. It just wasn't a good look. He just didn't look that great today. I don't know if he feels depressed or dejected because of everything that's going on, but he just did not look that great. So he came out as, the same way he did last time when I saw. He made eye contact with everybody, and he waved to people. And, I can tell you that when he saw his daughters, I'm sure he loves his sons. I'm sure he loves, Mummy and the rest of them. But something about his daughters, they got to be the apples of his eye, because the three of them were there, and he looked at them and he said, you all look so pretty, and his face really truly lit up. And then he said hello to everybody and stuff like that. So then that was that. So okay, and he smiled at the daughters, and the daughters of course smiled back at him. And then the prosecution team introduces themselves, and the defense team introduces themselves. And let me tell you something, that another thing that people were kind of gagging at, right? So when the appellate lawyer, I think her name is Shapiro, right? Alexander Shapiro. She was introducing everybody on the defense team. Why did she call Mark Agnifilo? She said, "Oh, this is Mark Garagos." And then she said, "Oh, I mean Mark Agnifilo." To me, that's giving that she has a lot of contact with Mark Agnifilo. Okay, I mean Mark Garagos, because Tenny Garagos is Mark Garagos's daughter. So to me, that really shows that he's probably a big part of what's going on. I firmly believe that. Everybody already thought that, but mistakes like that, it's just like, okay. So people were definitely chuckling behind that. That was a little weird, but okay. So I was wondering where Mama Combs was and Christian and them. They actually got there. They got there a little bit late. She went in. She had her trademark blonde colored wig. This time, it was a long straight wig, right? And it was tied into a ponytail. And she had on some outfit. I'm not a fashion girly like that, so I don't know exactly what the brand was that she was wearing, but I can guarantee you it costs more than this laptop I'm on right now. Okay, so she definitely was looking like money. Okay. I noticed that the courtroom artist was there, and she had her magnifying glass on, and I just couldn't help but wonder what these images are going to look like, because that's been a source of humor throughout this whole thing with her crazy looking photo renderings of Diddy. So she was there, and Christian and his girlfriend. The girlfriend is real pretty. Christian's girlfriend is real pretty. Very, very shapely, attractive young lady. Very attractive. And then the girl Chance, her mom was there. Okay, the sister. I'm from Brooklyn, Snake Eyes. Okay. So basically, what the defense was trying to argue is that the Mann Act charges, right? The charges of the, we're going to call it prostitution, okay? Or ostitution. I don't know. I don't want to get kicked off of TikTok. But those charges, they don't really stand, because what they're trying to say is that his conviction should be thrown out because he was basically making corn. Okay. He shouldn't be charged because it's voyeurism. So even though people traveled across state lines, he was filming these events. So it shouldn't be considered, that shouldn't be part of the Mann Act. And it wasn't for profit. Like, he wasn't like, PIMP-ing people, right? He wasn't doing that. He wasn't trying to make money. Oh, Ronald, you're from Brooklyn by Prospect Park. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I was born here in the United States, if that's what you're asking. All right. But I live in Brooklyn. So he wasn't making a profit. So, he was engaging in these things. Okay. And they were making the argument that the male escorts, they traveled voluntarily to participate in these FOs. Right. It says, and they also said that the P prostitution doesn't include commercial void. Okay, so this is the Alexander Shapiro says that the law requires Diddy to have had a financial motive for transporting the male escorts, and she said that the trial did not establish that. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this, but she also said that the conviction should be thrown out because Diddy filmed many of the FOs, and she said he was a consumer of amateur porn, okay, and adults have a right to consume pornography. And this is a case about adults who traveled interstate and engaged basically in a threesome. So this is what she said, okay? Please like this and share this on TikTok. I'm going to be here for like maybe 10 more minutes. And if you're watching on Facebook, please share it too over here in real time. It really helps me. And follow me, please, if you're not following me. Okay, so she also said that the verdict should stand because the charges were okay, so that was that. Okay. So what the prosecution said was that the prosecution said that the verdict should stand because the charges were properly brought and it's in the public interest to prevent prostitution, particularly when it involves the type of violence and, substances that occurred when Diddy was involved. So basically the prosecution is trying to say like, it wasn't just regular, that, right? Basically talking about the situation that happened, obviously with the video that, at the hotel with Cassie and stuff like that, basically trying to remind the judge to take all that into consideration. And like what I was talking earlier about with this situation is I was saying that a lot of people felt like the judge wasn't fair when it came to certain things. And I do believe that he was fair throughout the trial. I feel like he was pretty neutral throughout the trial. Okay. There were a lot of things that the defense wanted, that the prosecution wanted that he didn't grant, and vice versa. Like I feel like he tried his best to remain as neutral as he could during the trial. However, when you're deciding something, even though it was just those two charges with the Mann Act, right? When the judge is deciding, when he's rendering his, sentence, and when he's taking all these things into consideration, he can take into consideration the things that he witnessed during the trial. He can. And when he denied bail, he sort of, made reference to that, right? I always thought it was I always thought it was not smart, okay, on Mark Agnifillo's part when he was doing his closing argument to make such light of the DV and stuff like that occurred, because he basically, when he gave his closing argument, basically was just like, yeah, well, he did do, DV, and, he is a terrible person, but he didn't do that. And it's just like, so basically you're admitting that he's a violent person. And that's exactly what the judge said when he denied him bail. I don't know if you guys remember that. When he denied him bail, the Judge Supermanian said to Mark Agnifilo, he said, you, in your own words, said to us that he's guilty of DV. And he said, DV is violence. Like he said, those are his exact words verbatim. Okay. So I just don't think it was wise for him to be so flippant about the DV. He could lean into it a little bit, as far as maybe, obviously, you admitting that it happened because we all saw it on the video, but to make light of it like that was not smart. It just wasn't. So that was that. And it definitely did backfire for sure. So also the prosecutor, the Slavic said, there were secondary effects of this prostitution, right? Even though the conduct took place behind closed doors, Miss Ventura was getting, hit in the face, and Jane was getting, hit and kicked as well. And the defendant was also providing substances to all parties. All right. So, they went back and forth with it. I'm not capable, I'm just going to be honest, of getting into the weeds as far as specific cases that they cited, because it was a lot of legal jargon that I just was not really familiar with. But the gist of it was what I just told you. Okay. So I'm not going to pretend to know stuff I don't know and try to articulate that. But this was the gist. And I, wrote down the things that stood out to me so I could give you guys the gist of what happened. The hearing was not long. The hearing was about 90 minutes long in total. So it really wasn't that long, but that was the gist of what happened. Okay. Now, do I believe, so afterwards, Judge Supermanian said that he was going to basically, look over everything and render his decision as to whether or not these Mann Act violations are going to get thrown out, or if the convictions were going to be overturned. And he was going to let us know, in his words, soon. So whatever soon is, I'm assuming it's going to be probably before Friday. Friday is the sentencing, so I'm assuming that it's going to be before Friday. Okay. If you have any questions, you can post them now, because I'm going to be getting off in about another 5 minutes. So just wanted to also really quickly talk about some of the letters that were submitted to the judge on Diddy's behalf. So I don't know if you guys, I posted on my Facebook. If you're not following me on Facebook, follow me there. I'm a lot more active there than I am on TikTok, and I know I keep promising to be more active over here, but I am going to. But right now I'm really way more active on Facebook. But I posted a couple of a letter from Young Miami where she basically talked about how she can't attest to anything that happened before she was involved with him. Do I think that Diddy's going to be? Do I think he's going to be? It says science. I think maybe you mean sentenced. Yeah, I do think so. I don't think that he's going to be going home next Friday. So she basically talked about her experience with him and that it was a positive experience. She doesn't want to talk. She can't really speak to what happened before. Yeah, I don't understand why they waited so long either. But I think that, I don't know, I guess maybe for impact, they felt like it was going to make a difference or whatever. So she basically said that, her experience with him was positive, and, she had she was in a relationship with him for a couple of years, and she talked about how he took her to the Met Gala, and how, she felt as though it was important for, Black people to be in certain spaces, and, blah, blah, blah. She also talked about how he pours into his loved ones, and, but it just wrote a really glowing letter. There were other letters that we had seen from other people that definitely, it felt like a lawyer wrote those letters. But, that letter, I feel like she kind of wrote some of it. There were letters from Carl Thomas. He wrote a letter. Christian Combs wrote a letter. That letter to me, I don't have it here, but I'm sure you guys can Google it if you want to read it. I did hear someone read that letter, and I think that, Ronald, you said you think that the judge is going to give him time served or probation. You never know. Look, there's nothing is impossible, but I personally just don't think that that's going to happen, only because of the fact that he hasn't given him the opportunity to leave. That there were $50 million bail packages on the table. Even the day that he was acquitted of those serious charges, there was $1 million bail package on the table, and the judge basically said the same thing every single time, that he just doesn't feel comfortable, letting him out. So I just don't think he's going to do that, but I could be wrong. So the letter that Christian wrote, I'm not even going to hold you. It really made me feel so bad. My daughter thinks she's calling me a softie. I do feel bad for his kids. They're not kids, they're grown, but I feel bad for them. In the letter Christian wrote, he just basically, you could tell a lawyer didn't write it, because it was like, please, I can't take it anymore. Like, can you please send him home? Where, like, the wording was so, it just made me feel so bad. And this is just like a reminder as an adult, like, if you have children, think about your actions and the things that you're doing, because you think the judge is prejudiced. So I'm gonna get to that in a second. So, but think about your actions, because it's not just about you. You understand what I'm saying? The things that he's been found guilty of, or whatever, but his actions, the things that he's done throughout his life, I just don't think that he was very responsible with a lot of the things that he's done throughout his life. I just don't think he has been. You know what I mean? And it's really, really sad to see his children there in the courthouse, and the torture and horror that they're going through as a result of what's happened now. As far as the judge, let me tell you something. I said earlier in my video that the judge was neutral throughout this whole thing. He was, but do I think that he particularly cares for him? I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. And I think that it's really challenging to. You're supposed to be, I guess, unbiased as a judge, right? But everybody has a bias, right? I think it would be very challenging for someone to see that video, of somebody basically getting stomped out and not feel a certain type of way about it. Now, should that have any type of impact on his sentencing and stuff like that? Like I explained earlier, judges are allowed to take those things into consideration. They are allowed to do that. So, that it is what it is, okay? So, the last thing I wanted to talk about, oh yeah, and also Quincy Combs wrote a letter to the judge, and he talked about Diddy stepping up as a father figure. Now, look, a lot of people say that that was something that was forced, right? The running narrative, or the running narrative has sort of been, hey, he didn't allow Albie Shore to be in his life, in his son's life. And then some people are saying that Albie Shore didn't want to be a father. So I wasn't there. I don't know. But this is what people are saying. What, excuse me, what Quincy said is that he stepped up when there was no father around. This is what he said in the letter. And that letter seemed very, very heartfelt. Did seem like he got a little bit of assistance from a lawyer. But for the most part, I do feel as though those letters that I talked to you about, a huge chunk of those letters were definitely written by, his sons and the girl, Young Miami, or Carisha. Okay. So now listen to this. Okay. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. I thought that this was really, really interesting. Diddy has a decent rapport. Yeah, so you said we're human. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the truth. You can't unsee it. It's hard to unsee that. It's hard to unsee photograph of Cassie, right? With a chunk of flesh missing out of her forehead. Like that happened. We heard the testimony surrounding the incident. It's hard to unhear that. It's hard to unsee that. You know what I'm saying? I do believe that people can and should be forgiven for their transgressions. I do believe that. But as far as this situation with the judge and, the sentencing, I don't know what's, going to happen with that. But again, I don't see him going home on next Friday. I just don't see him going home. Okay. So, we're getting mixed reporting coming out of MDC as it relates to his experience there. Okay. On the one hand, you're hearing that things are very good, and not very good, but like very decent. And the COs are making sure that he's safe, and that, that he did have some type of an altercation with someone, and the COs sort of, they stepped in and made sure that he wasn't harmed in any ways, so that got out, right? Then we're hearing that there's maggots in the food. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what to believe, okay? But some inmates also wrote letters, okay? One of the letters that an inmate in MDC wrote was basically touting an entrepreneurship class that Diddy is teaching in jail, and it's called Free Game with Diddy. That's the name of the course, okay? He's teaching this course, child. And he basically said that Diddy, is a positive influence on everybody that's there, okay? And he is, sharing knowledge with them and stuff like that, and putting them on game, right? Free game. And he basically, he says it's the little adjustments that add up to big change. This is what Diddy, has taught them, right? Another inmate said that because of the class that he's teaching, he feels as though he has purpose and something to look forward to every day. Let me just give you a quick rundown of the class outline. Some of the topics are never be embarrassed, no ego, okay? Time waits for no man, trust the process, and a bonus class is, and I'm not making this up, can't stop, won't stop. No, I'm just joking. I added that, but can't stop, won't stop. There's also another class section called failure, and it includes advice on what to do when a plan doesn't go right and how to handle being overbooked and off schedule. Okay. Finally, Alexander Shapiro said that the Mann Act was had racist and sexist origins that were well documented and beyond. Well, I don't even see what I wrote there, but basically saying that it's an antiquated act, okay, and that the whole history of the statute is an embarrassment to the United States. So that was basically it. That was the argument. Those were the arguments that were made. I will be there next Friday. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get into that main courtroom. Let me tell you something. They were lined up from Tuesday to get in there in that main courtroom today, which it wasn't really necessary for them to be lined up like that because there just weren't as many people there as were the last time, like for those other days and stuff like that. So, but the line sitters are going to be charging upwards of $1,000 to get a seat in that main courtroom. They're going to be charging $1,000. Okay. So in order for me to get into that courtroom, if they were lined up from Tuesday, for me to get into the main courtroom on Friday, I would have to be there from Wednesday, not Thursday, because my intention was to go on Thursday, right? In the daytime, like in the morning, and just sort of hang out and then have my son-in-law and my daughter stay overnight for me and hold my spot. And then I would go back at about 6:30 or 7 o'clock. I spoke with the guy. Are you guys familiar with Inner City Press? He has a wonderful page on X and I follow him. I'm subscribed to all his updates. He is a true journalist. Like this, he bleeds journalism. Like he literally is at the Southern District of New York every single day, reporting on tons and tons of cases all day, every single day. And he works all the time, like literally all day long, all the time. So I spoke with him and I asked him what time the hearing was going to be next Friday. He said he's not sure, but he said he thinks it's going to be 10 o'clock. So, but it's looking like if I'm trying to get into that main courtroom, I'm not going to be able to do it by just being there on Thursday. I would have to be there on Wednesday. Women are overdosing on Tylenol just to make fun of the president. I don't know about that. Like, I don't know what it has to do with the Diddy trial. I don't have any friends who are doing that, so I don't know about that. So that would be crazy if that's true. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think? You think I should do that? Like, I don't know. I really, really want to be in that main courtroom for so many reasons. I want to see the look on everyone's face if he's allowed to go home. And I want to see the look on everyone's face if he's not allowed to go home. I don't see the judge giving him some insane sentence. And then, there's a probation report, right? And that report, I think, recommended something along the lines the lines of maybe 3 years or something like that. So, I don't know. We're going to see. So, okay, so over here on StreamYard, I'm going to stay here on TikTok for a little while longer if you guys have any more questions. Over here, I'm going to end the stream on Facebook and on YouTube. So please, you guys, make sure you share this stream, okay? And I'm going to stay live over here a little bit longer on TikTok, okay? Thank you guys so much over here for watching. Oh, hi, Julie. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you commenting and thank you so much. I'm definitely going to be going live again before Friday, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. And then Friday, honey, is the date. So we're gonna see. Okay, so I'm gonna end this over here on YouTube and on Facebook.